Welcome to The Art of Charm. I'm Jordan Harbinger. The Art of Charm brings together the best coaches in the industry to teach you guys how to get and keep the girl, as well as put your best foot forward in both social and business situations. Now, this show is about you, and we're here to help you become the best man you can be in every area of your life. Make sure to stay up to date with everything going on here and get some killer free ebooks, as well as drills and exercises that'll help you become more charismatic and confident by signing up for the newsletter at theartofcharm.com. And if you're new to the show but you want to know more about what we teach here at The Art of Charm, listen to the Art of Charm Toolbox at theartofcharmpodcast.com/toolbox. That's where you get the fundamentals of dating and attraction, such as body language, eye contact, vocal tonality, all that stuff that's more important than you might think. We've got boot camps that's live training running 2 to 3 times every single month here in Hollywood, California. We've also got some details on all that stuff at theartofcharm.com. Looking forward to meeting all you guys in LA in 2014. All right, today I talk with my friend Rob Judge from datehottergirls.com. We're going to talk about why dating instructors and life coaches are generally a joke, and seeing through the smoke, mirrors, and sales copy to the truth about personal growth and social improvement. We're also going to talk about how smartphones have changed the dating game, a framework for eliciting and compelling great responses from her via text, and how texting and communication is always filtered through her current emotional state. We're also going to talk about how we naturally judge not only nonverbal but also written communication, how to get rid of natural jitters when approaching women, the magic, quote-unquote, magic formula for a great bar or date story, and I really love that. And, of course, what cool vulnerability is and why that's important. And as you guys know, I'm a big ability, and sharing and openness. So really, I enjoyed this show, and I know you will too, with my friend here, Rob Judge from datehottergirls.com. Enjoy. So, Rob, you're a self-proclaimed nerd by birth.
I am. You know, I can't hide it.
So what exactly, I mean, I'm not going to ask you what nerd means, but, you know, you said you seem destined for a neutered existence of heartbreaking introversion and involuntary celibacy. And, you know, you're not that old, but well, how old are you now?
I actually just turned 31.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm older than I look.
Yeah, definitely. And you were settling, and then you got a girlfriend, and then it says your longtime girlfriend dumped you rather brutally. I mean, how long were you dating her?
So this was really girlfriend. You know, it was kind of like one of those things where it was the girl I thought I was going to marry. So I had been dating her for 5 years, from when I was 17 years old, all through college, up until when I graduated college and started working, in, you know, this office job in New York City.
Okay, and she dumped you rather brutally. What does that mean?
Oh, it's as bad as you could imagine. She cheated on me. She kind of strung me along for about a month or so. And then she gave me that heart-wrenching, you know, I just think of you more as a friend now. And then I kind of found out about the cheating and all that stuff later. So it was not the greatest moment of my life, you know?
Yikes. And so that was just like the nail in the coffin. I mean, what happened after that?
Well, you know, it's funny because when guys go through stuff like that, you know, and we all have our sob stories, and, you know, a lot of, especially as, you know, you yourself, Jordan, like, you know, as a dating instructor, I think no one gets into this because everything's going great and, you know, we have this awesome dating life. Obviously, there has to come that moment where you kind of realize that something needs to change. So when that happened, I sort of realized, I was like, wow, like, something is not right. Like, I don't know how to relate to women. I don't know how to meet women. I don't really know what women find attractive. In fact, the way I thought of my girlfriend, and the reason the relationship failed, and it was all my fault, was because I looked at her like she was like a prettier man without a penis. You know, like I related to her like I related to my friends, and that's really not the way that women want to be spoken to, want to communicate with their boyfriend or someone. And so that sort of what prompted me to go back and start really studying, and obviously I first got involved with all, like, you know, the pickup artist stuff and that kind of thing. And then as time went on, I really kind of took it upon myself to go deeper and really look at like female psychology and really kind of like pay attention to what women are saying, to really kind of just understand where they're coming from and how they want just to be, I guess, for lack of a better word, seduced, or, you know, how the process they go through when they feel attraction for a guy. Okay. And now your message is a little bit more unique than a lot of like pick-up-y type guys, because you're 100% about being a student first, teacher second, right? Absolutely. In fact, part of the reason I'm so excited to be on this podcast is like the pickup podcast was something I started with. I remember iPod and listening to it, on the way to, when I go to my office job. So absolutely, I really know what it's like to go through the whole, dating advice scene and that kind of thing first as a student. And now, I'm kind of looking back, back on it through like the eyes of an instructor now.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things that I think sets you and I apart, not from each other, but from the rest of the yahoos in the industry, I don't really consider the Art of Charm to be in the same industry as a lot of that stuff, especially not anymore. But when I started talking about this stuff, I was like, all these guys, have their shit together, and it's really cool to see, and I'm just on this path learning. And then it started to get old because I started to meet some of these guys in real life and be like, these guys are friggin' tools. And they're like trying to be all rock star on the internet, but they're not cool at all. Like they're not even like normal. Like my normal friends were cooler than these guys. You know,
I had the exact same experience where you just start meeting these guys, and it's like that scene in The Wizard of Oz where it's the man behind the curtain. You realize that it was all smoke and mirrors, that a lot of these guys just project this image on the internet. And there were legitimately some guys I met who I thought were really did kind of walk the walk. But a lot of the guys I met, like you're saying, it was like it almost blew my mind that I was taking advice from this person that probably was in a worse off place than a lot of my friends that are horrible with women. So it's funny you have that same realization.
Yeah, I mean, some of these guys, I remember meeting them a bunch at a party. I flew out to California for a party, and I was like, this is the guy who's like Mr. like tough martial arts guy, gets all the chicks. I'm like, he was in the corner like nursing a drink in a really awkward way, talking to the same person all night that was like another dude. And then I was like, okay. And then all these other guys who were supposed to be like all these really smooth characters, I would talk to some of the regular females that were at the party, just regular chicks, and they were like, yeah, that guy's weird, he keeps hitting on me and like staring at me. And I'm like, oh, that's like so-and-so who's supposed to be this like major world-renowned dating instructor, and he's like being super creepy at some like bowling alley. Like, what? And I was just like, oh man. And the more I learned about a lot of these so-called gurus, it really is smoke and mirrors and sales copy,
It is. I know. It's comical in one respect, but it's also kind of sad too that that these guys are getting away with it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it sucks. And what really sucks isn't just like, I don't care if people get away with stuff. I mean, it kind of sucks. Karma's a bitch. But the problem is, you get guys that want legitimate help, and they're like, what sets you apart from X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, God, well, first of all, I'm not a fucking weirdo. But, I try not to talk too much crap about like so-called competitors, but I'm like, that program's weird. If you go to that program, you're going to come out more weird than you came in. I'm not trying to make you like into some superhero PUA weirdo. Like, I'm trying to bring out confidence by running you through your insecurities. And so like a lot of guys, they don't get it. And the other thing that really stinks is you'll talk to a guy who really needs your help really bad. And I know you've gone through this too. You'll talk to a guy who really, really needs help. And you're like, dude, come and do something with me, or something with the Art of Charm, or something with Rob Judge, or whatever. And they'll be like, no, all this crap is a scam. And then you talk to him a little bit more, and you find out he did a bunch of lame-o competitor boot camps where the guy like was listening to his iPod during the boot camp and like phoning it in and texting and like being like, yeah, go talk to that girl over there, I'm watching, while he's like playing, Candy Crush on his iPhone.
I know. And what else is kind of funny, just a quick side, to kind of go with that, is I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you tell someone what you do. You're like, yeah, I'm a dating instructor. And they've seen some of these other like really eccentric, bizarre, crazy dating instructors on the internet. And they think that's what you do. They think that I'm like going out wearing like top hats and, doing all this crazy stuff. And it's like, no, like I legitimately just like want to empower like other guys like me to just feel more confident and meet quality women and relate to and have quality relationships. I'm like I'm like a civilian by day and then this like weird pickup superhero by night.
Yeah, it's so weird and creepy, and it's just, I mean, authenticity is just so hard to find, especially in all this smoke and mirrors internet stuff. And unfortunately, a lot of guys, especially guys that aren't that smart, will get burned by it, and then they come out thinking, oh, there's no way to really improve myself. Oh, well, I'm just going to stick with the current crap situation that I have now because there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, that really is one of the most unfortunate casualties of all this is that when guys do get frustrated and they give up because they've gotten bad advice or misinformation. So that does really that really sucks.
Yeah, it becomes like, instead of just being like, oh well, that's the industry, it becomes sad. And it's like, I'm networked really well with a lot of the fitness and nutrition guys, and they have the exact same issue where like one guy's like, it's diet and exercise, and there's a few lifts I'm going to teach you, and it's a lot of hard work, and it requires some planning. And then there's another guy who's like, I sell the only coffee that doesn't have mold on it that kills you. And everyone's like, well, I'm going to go with that guy. And then they get burned by that guy and they go, this is all a scam. I'm just going to be fat and unhealthy. And it's like, it's an inexcused process, but at some point you got to see their logic, which is like, everyone's lying to you. So where do you go?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think it's so important when you're making a decision who you're going to follow or whose advice you're going to take is to really, really look at them and not just go for the easy out, not just say, oh, okay, this guy is like promising me like these, like these magic lines or this like easy fix. Like, no, that obviously anyone worth their salt is going to tell you, like, I can help you out and I can show you the way, but it's also going to be a lot of hard work too. Yeah,
it's just tough because they've been conditioned by sales copy, by those same people we were just talking about, to not want to do the work.
Exactly.
So then when they go through a bunch of that and they're like, that's scammy, and then you're like, well, here's another equally risky proposition, only it's a lot more work. They're like, hell no.
Yeah.
And I totally get that too, because it's like, why would you choose the harder option that also might fail just like everything else that you've done?
Yeah. I know. And again, just being a student, I totally relate to what you're saying. It's just that constant, that frustration. And I felt it a lot as a student too, where you're trying something, you're going out, and it's embarrassing too. That's the worst part about this. Like, at least with fitness, when you fail, it's sort of a private failure. When you fail to beat women, it's a public failure, which really sucks.
I know, in front of like all of your friends, and you're like, oh, I needed that, like I needed another hole in the head.
Yeah. I've definitely been there too. So it's a rough road.
So fortunately, and one of the things that we do here on the Art of Charm podcast primarily is give guys a bunch of free stuff so they know it's legit. So you came up with some pretty cool ideas, namely the smartphone's impact on dating, which actually is a pretty popular topic. I've talked about this a lot. I've given talks on this, some more exciting than others, but I think it's pretty interesting because smartphone really has changed things. Back in even the 90s and stuff, or even 2000s, yet when you got a phone number, and I remember this even just because I had to do it. When I was in high school and college, you didn't get to text a chick. You had to call her house, and like half the time her mom or dad answered the phone. And so, if you got a phone number, it meant more than it does today because she wasn't like, screw it, I'm just going to ignore it. It was like, no, you're calling her dad.
I remember sitting there with the phone in my hand, just trembling, and like exactly that situation. Like the only thing that was like kind of comparable was when a girl would give you like her beeper number, beeper number. Yeah, like that was like, I was like, yes, the beeper number. I don't have to. But I've totally been there where you call up and it's just like you're talking to the parents or exactly. And back in like the 90s, you had to leave voice, actually, there weren't even voicemails.
The whole family would hear it. The whole family would hear it. So you couldn't be like, hey, what's up? Cool meeting you yesterday. You had to be like, hi, this is Robert. I'm calling for Katie. Please have her return her call at her earliest convenience at 734-415-2545. Thank you. And meanwhile, you're like, that sucked. I don't know if this is the kind of machine where I can push like one and it starts over and like, do I delete it? And then you're like, oh crap, I'm still on the phone. So and it's like this whole big mess. And if she doesn't call you, you don't know if she even got the message, because like her dad or sister, like you don't even know. There's so many black boxes. Now it's actually gotten harder and easier because now you can just text somebody, but also they can just be like, fuck it, and never call you or ignore it. Or give their number. You'll get a number just because she wants you to leave.
Oh, exactly, absolutely. And I think girls too. Not just girls. I think guys too. We all. People crave validation, and I think that some girls just like seeing their phone lighting up. They'll never answer the calls, they'll never answer the texts, but they just like that validation of constantly, guys chasing them, that kind of thing. So I think the smartphone gives women a lot of what they crave without having to put that much investment back into it. It's like they'll sit there all day and like look at these texts coming in from these guys. Oh, you're beautiful. Hey, sexy. What are you up to? And on a validation level, she likes it, but on in terms of like her returning those texts, it's never going to happen.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and that's uniquely a smartphone thing. How else has the smartphone sort of changed dating in our generation?
Well, there's so many aspects of smartphone that really I think has really kind of changed the way men and women interact. And one, like most notably, is the way that we speak to each other on text. And this is something that really became very apparent to me when my parents learned. Well, and you can't see me, but I'm putting learned in finger quotes here, because to say they learned how to use texting, they really didn't. Because what started happening is I get these texts from my dad that were like, hi, and that was it. And I'd be like, what's up, Dad? And then and then nothing. Or he'd be like, he would write out these texts that were like, basically like he was writing a letter. And I started realizing is that texting is almost a language onto itself. Like the way that we text people and the way we communicate on text, it's not the way that you would sit down and write like a formal letter, like, like a handwritten letter in the 90s, or I guess even before the 90s, when people actually did that kind of stuff. Or it's not the way that you would have a conversation in a face-to-face interaction. Like the way that you actually write text is like it's a communication style onto itself.
Yeah, that's true. You kind of have to be in the groove on that. It's interesting. And you've got actually something you call the key lock sequence, because a lot of guys, they'll text and be like, what's up? And they're like, man, she's not answering me. And it's funny because having studied this stuff, I'm like, of course she's not answering you. Why would she answer that text? And we have a product called the Textbook that was like one of the first, if not the first book that talked about this. Now it's ancient history. It's like 5 years old, right? But like back then people were like, oh my God, texting, And yeah. It's funny because now you've got a little bit of a system for showing people like, hey, this is how you get a reply.
Exactly. Well, the thing with the key lock sequence is that it's just a simple framework for guys to just remind themselves of how to text women. Like exactly what you're saying, like texting a girl, hey, what's up? Or it was nice meeting you, or hope you're having a great day, or, any text that like basically doesn't communicate your personality, you should not be texting, especially with a girl that like you've only met maybe once or twice. Maybe you got her phone number at a coffee shop or at a bar or a nightclub or whatever. But the thing is that if you're not displaying your personality in your text to her, she's probably not going to respond, unfortunately. So like sort of the foundation of the key lock sequence, sorry, I'm tangling my words here. Okay. It rests on the idea that it's there to help you convey your personality so that when she's reading your text, she's reminded of this attractive guy she gave her number to in the first place. Okay.
Yeah. So how does it work?
Okay. So basically the key lock sequence works on, and we say 3 texts, but it obviously can be longer than 3 texts, but it's really 3 texts that hit 3 different emotions. The first emotion is simply to capture her attention. It could be, and you can capture her attention in a lot of different ways. You can do it by saying something funny that maybe kind of gets her to giggle a little bit. It could be something that maybe shocks her a little bit, like that she's like, whoa, like wow, I wasn't expecting that. It could be basically any sort of text that gets her to stop what she's doing and actually pay attention to her phone. You see, like, and I've seen, friends of mine that are females do this. When they'll get a text from a guy and it's boring, they'll just kind of look at their phone, with very nonchalantly. They'll look at it and put it back in their pocket. Like they're not going to sit there and stop what they're doing and pay attention to it. And I mean, it's just like kind of like when you go to approach a girl in a bar or a nightclub or, in a coffee shop. If she's not even paying attention to you, if she can't even hear the words that you're saying, you have zero shot of ever attracting that girl. One of the first things that I always teach students, and this is actually, it sounds so simplistic, but it's a very important lesson I think a lot of guys need to learn, is like rule 0 for meeting women is simply you have to capture their attention first. And again, like so many guys, like, and just, I don't mean to go too much on a tangent about approaching, but sure. I'll watch students and they'll walk up to girls and they'll speak, either way too fast or they won't speak loud enough, or, and this is especially true in like a nightclub or a lounge situation where you're competing with music and like, and voices and crowds and that kind of thing. So if she can't even hear what you're saying, I mean, and a lot of guys think they're getting rejected, but in actuality, she's not even paying attention. Like she a lot of times the girl probably didn't even know he was even there. And it's kind of the same thing. It's like if you text these really boring text and texts that don't strike any kind of emotion in her, don't get her to stop what she's doing, she's probably not even going to remember that you even texted her.
Right, because she's getting a ton of those. Not only that, but it's not interesting. It's definitely not more interesting than what she's doing, and it doesn't compel a response. So you get like, what's up? And it's like, well, what am I supposed to say to that? Nothing. I'm like grocery shopping, and I'm over it, right? But if you say something like, if you compel a response, you get something going that's like, hey, troublemaker, what's shaking? That's not that great, but it still has personality. The other one doesn't at all.
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. Like, especially if you had a nickname for her. Say, like, you were calling her troublemaker the whole time. You know, you were joking around with her, you were flirting with her, and then you use that callback humor. That's definitely going to get her to stop, because she's going to be like, "Oh yeah, it was that funny guy Jordan who was calling me a troublemaker at whatever, like." Whenever you met her. So that callback humor works really well. So that's something I always advise guys, guys try to think back to the interaction and remember the high points. Remember the points when she was laughing, when she was like, kind of playfully punching you, she was flirting with you. And those are the moments that you really need to recall in your first text.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. But in the meantime, guys, listen, it's Jordan here from The Art of Charm. You've heard me talk a lot about taking you to the next level in life at work and in your relationships. And you've also thought to yourself, yeah, I want to up my game. I want to become a better man. I want to be a better hustler. I want to be a better person. And my guess is that you've been thinking about it for a really long time. Am I right? So I want to tell you this. Stop thinking. Your chance is now. Do you really need more time, more information, more plans for the future? Or do you want to become that guy today? Because the truth is this. You can be the guy who sits around all day and thinks about becoming better, or you can be the guy who decides that today is the day you're going to become awesome. And I want that for you. Why? Because you are awesome. You just don't know it yet. So join me and thousands of other guys who've taken action in their lives at theartofcharm.com. Now let's get back to it. Yeah, and guys will just be like, hey, what's going on? Because they're thinking, man, if she texted me, I'd be like all about it. So they're like, I'm going to get that same response, and it's just not true.
That is such a great point. And that goes back to what I said earlier about my when I had that 5-year girlfriend, and I was trying to relate to her like as if she was like a dude. I think a lot of guys look at texting like they write to the girl the text that maybe they would want to get. But you have to keep in mind that female psychology and the way female attraction works is so different. You really have to adjust your texting style to make sure that you're really kind of like speaking to what she wants.
Sure. Plus, you've got that whole thing where any communication is always interpreted through your current emotional state. So that's why when somebody can be like, what's your deal? If you're in a happy mood, you might be like, man, nothing. I'm just having a great day. What about you? And then the next day someone could go, hey, man, what's your deal? And you're like, why? What's your problem? What, I'm supposed to be cheerful all the time? Fuck you. You might even, you just don't like it. And the person said the exact same thing in the exact same way. It's all about your emotional state. And the same thing is true for texting. You text her after you meet her at the bar or the club, and she's like, oh, yeah, hey, it was so great meeting you. It's really awesome. But we totally have to hang out. And then you text her the next day, and she's like, her cat just puked on her favorite dress. She's doing laundry. Her mom's all up on her like, you need to clean your crap out of my garage. You're not getting a free ride anymore. Her dad's like, I'm not paying for your college if you're going to keep being a whore. Like, whatever. Like, she's going through all that. And then you text her and you're like, what's up? And she's like, I don't want to talk to you. You're a jerk. And you're like, what is going on? How is this happening?
That is such a great point, is that is so true. And that's why I think like the best texts of all time, like the best texts I've ever come up with, are the type of texts that could actually almost change a girl's mood, even if it's only for like 10 seconds. Like, I mean, I remember I sent a girl a text once, and she told me, she was like, I was in class, I was in such a bad mood, and then your text made me laugh out loud. And that was like one of the best compliments I've ever got on my, quote unquote text game, because like to that idea that you could change someone's mood, that you could add value to someone's day, that you can kind of like, take someone that might be not in the greatest place that day and change their mood by something you wrote them. I think that was so cool. And I'll even give the text I sent that girl. And again, it's probably kind of played out now, but the text I wrote her, and this actually had just happened. I was walking down First Avenue in New York City, and there's like no cars on the road, and I see this old guy on a scooter. And I mean, this guy must have been like 70 years old, and he had like that creeper, like leering smile on his face, and he had like this helmet, knee pads, like the whole regalia, and riding a scooter, no less,
A rape scooter?
A rape scooter? What? Yeah, but that would make for a great text. Yeah, like I just saw the guy riding the rape scooter. Wow, that might freak some girls out. But no, it's a perfect way to describe it though. And I remember I wrote her. I just said, "Oh my God, I just saw a 70-year-old man on a scooter wearing knee pads and a helmet, checking out babes. Made my whole day." And just something as simple as that. And again, I wasn't even really trying to be funny. I mean, I obviously I saw the humor in it, and I wanted to relate that to her. But I wasn't like, here's this great joke that's going to make this girl crack up. I literally just saw this, and I was like, oh, my God, I have to text this girl because, like, you know, she had that sort of quirky sense of humor. She's going to like this. And I sent it to her. And, you know, like I said, like, she had told me later on when we met up for a date, she was like, yeah, like, you know, she's like, I kind of forgotten about you. Like, I was having this horrible day. I was in class. And then this text came, you know, I saw this text on my phone. And I just laughed out loud. It made my whole day. So something like that. And, like, you know, I challenge every guy out there listening right now that, like, if you get a girl's number, that should be what you're trying to do, is to, like, you know, don't try to ride the wave of her emotion. Actually be so, you know, compelling and be so good at texting that you can actually spark the emotion that you want in her by just being really genuine and authentic and just, for lack of a better word, awesome.
Yeah, and it's also, this is the unfortunate truth about why guys need to use emoticons and stuff like that. A lot of guys are like, that's stupid, it's so lame. But it literally, it's one of those little quick things that can change your entire quote-unquote texting game, because guys will write something and they're thinking, again, it's the emotional state that you're currently in. They're thinking, oh, my God, this is hilarious. And then she gets it and she's like, screw you. You know? And you throw a smiley in there and you're like, oh, it looks beta or whatever, like guys who are obsessed with the dating industry stuff say. And then it's like, fine, but now she knows your intent is there. You know, and it's like it changes the tone of things. And that's like what you were saying before, how there's a totally different lingo and language of texting. And if you don't know how to do it, you're not going to communicate as clearly. And also, it's kind of funny now that you mentioned that. I just thought about also like social classes when it comes to texting. Like, you can tell how educated somebody is if they're still using proper punctuation in texting, even if they're abbreviating. And then there's like the people who write in like basically ghetto texting, where like they just cut out all the vowels. There's tons of misspelling, no punctuation. They like change the S's to Z's, and they mash words together because they're like on like a T9 dictionary, even though it's 2014.
I'm sure you've gotten letters from students that are written like that, and you have to like sit there and you need like the Rosetta Stone to like decode what they're even trying to say.
Oh my God. And additionally, there's sometimes, I hate to say it, but I'll judge you, and I'll be like, this person's going to be a waste of my time, because they're not even intelligent enough to understand the answer I'm about to deliver, so I'm just not going to deliver the answer.
I totally agree with that. And that's, I know, just as, you know, and it's kind of off topic, but as an instructor, it's like when you get like a letter from a guy and he's just like, you know, it's like a long letter, I'm way more inclined to read it and respond if it's written well, and you know, I can make sense of it, and it's easy to read, you know, short sentences, you know, the writing style is clear. Then if I get like this long, you know, just like, it's like one wall of text of just like, you know, this like almost like stream of consciousness musing, like in this like ghetto speak, I'm kind of going to be like, you know what, I just don't have time for this. And I think women have that exact same response when they see this, like girls, like, you know, a very attractive girl is not going to put in a lot of time to decode what you're saying, so you really need to make sure that, you know, your writing style is very clear on text, that it's not like these like long sentences or you know, these like weird spellings and that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's a great point.
It's interesting because it off of that particular note as well, guys don't understand that if they don't have any value, if they haven't built any value with her, there's no reason for her to give you that kind of attention. So guys will write like long messages or like ask them for too much investment, and they're the equivalent of like, you know, when you're walking down the street in Manhattan, in New York, whatever, or like in San Francisco or any other big city, and like a homeless guy's like, hey man, do you have a quarter? How often do you stop and go, you know what, I'm really sorry, I don't have a quarter, I apologize? No, you don't even look at them. You keep walking, and like if you're feeling generous, you like shake your head in a cursory fashion. You shake your head in a cursory fashion, and you're just like, nah. You don't even like utter a real word out because you're like, whatever, dude. You're giving me nothing. Like, I don't even owe you a reply. I'm not even going to reply.
Yeah, no, that's so true, and that's the thing. I think that like you have to. One of the things I always tell guys, and I do my own personal dating life, is no matter how good the interaction went with the girl, no matter how much I thought I killed it, or even no matter how bad I thought I might have done, I always assume I'm back at square zero when I'm texting her. I don't assume that like I'm in negative territory. I don't assume I'm in positive territory. I know that like I'm just a number on her phone, and what I do with my text game is going to determine how she perceives me. And, and obviously, if you made a really great impression or a really bad impression, obviously, like, texting is kind of just the icing on the cake. But a lot of the times you'll be in that gray area, and stuff you do on text can really kind of knock a girl either over the fence or, just ensure that she's never, ever going to see you and possibly post your text up on an internet site for everyone to laugh at.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're going to end up on one of those. So you have something that you call finding the truth as an approach mindset. It's a different way to look at approaching attractive girls that clears out a lot of jitters. Tell us about that, because I think everybody listening would love to know how to clear out some jitters.
Okay, so find out the truth. This was a concept that I sort of realized in myself, and I only sort of articulated it when I started coaching. But this was something, a realization I sort of, like a silent one. And Jordan, you probably came to it too when you were going out and meeting women and, kind of getting over your jitters to approach women. Is that obviously when we all first start, no one wants to get rejected. And we project so much of ourselves onto the approach. Like I said before, I've seen students get rejected simply because they weren't speaking loud enough, and they'll run back to me and be like, "Oh my God, I suck. Oh, I can't do this." And it's like, dude, like she didn't even reject you. She just didn't even hear you. So the first part to like the first like I guess like principle to understand about finding the truth is that like you have to kind of take yourself out of the picture. And obviously that's so much easier said than done. We're sitting here on a podcast. It's so easy for me to sit behind a microphone and say that, but put a hot girl in front of me, I'm still going to feel a little bit of those jitters. But the one thing I always remind myself, and this has helped me so much to just get me over those jitters and make sure that I actually do approach, is I stop looking at the girl as like some kind of like quest, as like, oh, I need to get her number, or I need to take this girl home, or I need to make this girl my girlfriend. I just, no expectations. My only expectation when I walk up to a girl is that I'm gonna find out something. True, like you even if the girl blows you off in like a nanosecond, she's like fuck you, no. At least you found out that you had the courage to actually do it. You found out that girl is, was not in a good mood. You found out like so many truths in that one interaction, and the corollary to that, like the negation of that, is when you don't do anything, when you just sit there and you don't approach girls, you just like watch them from a distance, like we all have, and we kind of talk ourselves out of approaching. Like, yeah, she might have and again, when we don't approach, it's because we make excuses. We say, oh, she probably has a boyfriend. She looks like a bitch. Oh, I'm not dressed appropriately. Like, add your favorite excuse here. And that may or may not be true. But the thing is that like you're never going to know that for a fact. It's never going to be like that validated truth. You actually went out, you challenged that truth to see if it actually really existed in the world. And the thing that like I remind myself is that like if you can like constantly make excuses and you always talk yourself out of approaching, you're going to go through your entire life in this sort of like prison cage of fantasy of like what you think like might have been or could have been or would have been, and you won't know anything like with any kind of certainty. And I'm 31 right now. I can't imagine if I went back all the approaches I did, if I hadn't done those, if I was sitting here at 31 years old and I hadn't done all those approaches, I wouldn't know like a tenth of what I know now. I wouldn't have had all these great experiences. And for the approaches that went bad, I wouldn't have some really hilarious stories to tell my friends over beers. Like no matter what, you always gain something. You always gain that truth by actually doing the approach. And I think lose sight of that, especially with this whole like, muchacho, like sort of like I'm the master pickup artist, like sort of mentality. Guys are always looking, they project their expectations, they project themselves, they project their ego onto the girl, and that's not fair to her and that's not fair to you. So I think that like what I always sort of, whenever I'm feeling those jitters, whenever I'm getting ready to talk myself out of doing an approach, I take a deep breath and remind myself it's not about her, it's not even about me, it's simply about like putting one foot in front of the other and finding out that truth.
Yeah, excellent. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And so, of course, once we do nut up and we do make the approach, in fact, for guys in relationships, like I live with my girlfriend, so I want to get down to I'm greedy here. I want to use some of this stuff myself. You have a good storytelling formula that I love, because I love telling stories. On my show here, I tell tons of stories, from traveling in North Korea to, of course, back in the day, approaching girls, to entrepreneur type stuff that we discuss a lot here. I mean, you've got 3.5 steps, apparently, to telling a great bar or date story. Let's rock that out. I want to hear this because it's a turnkey method. And a lot of people ask me, how come you're good at telling stories? And I go, I don't know. I can't shut up. I'm not really sure otherwise. How do we make this, how do we formulate it?
So that's a great question. And some people are just naturally good storytellers that do this naturally, but a lot of guys convince themselves, oh, I'm not a good storyteller, I'm not charismatic. And actually, storytelling is a lot simpler than a lot of guys think it is. So the 3.5 steps are very, very simple. The first thing is that you have to have a character that wants something. See, this is what a lot of guys get wrong. Like, obviously, if you're telling a story about yourself, you're the character. But the thing that a lot of guys get wrong is articulate what the character wants. Look, if you watch any movie, read any book, or you even think back to any great story you heard, there's always a character that has a very strong desire. So that's like step number 1 to your story is that you need to have a character that has a strong desire. And the more that you, the better you describe that and the better you understand what that desire is, the better your story is going to be. Because the thing is that people, they live through your stories, right? Because like they understand what it's like to just be dying to have your first kiss, or they understand what it's like to hate your job so much that you're looking for any way out, you're looking for any solution. Whatever your story is about, if you really articulate very, very well what that strong desire is, your listener is really going to relate to what you're saying, and they're going to be like, oh my God, like I've been there, and they're going to be so much more engaged in your story. So that's step 1 into just taking a listener and just sucking them into your story. Step 2 is whatever your character desires, he or she has to come into some sort of conflict that challenges that desire. So say for instance, and again, I just off the top of my head, I just give the example of like wanting your first kiss so badly that like you would do anything to get it. And again, this is a true story about me. When I was in 7th grade, I was so desperate. All my friends had making out with girls and doing seven in heaven and all this crazy stuff. And I remember I just wondered what it would be like to kiss a girl. And this is it was literally like a burning curiosity I had. And the thing is, if my story was simply, oh, I really wanted to kiss this girl, and I went to a party and played Truth or Dare and I had my first kiss, that story would suck, because the thing is that there's nothing interesting about that story.
It's all factual information, yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole thing, right? It's simply journalism at that point. You're simply just telling, relating the facts. A great story, even if you have to exaggerate a little bit, I would never say lie, but by exaggerate, I mean if you dramatize things a little bit, if you kind of blow things out of proportion, if you sometimes even drawing in metaphors that are a little more grandiose than the situation would require. Like, for instance, if you compared wanting your first kiss, I don't know, like Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon, or some sort of grandiose sort of high metaphor for what you want. But the thing is that your character and your character's desire has to come into some sort of conflict with the world. And again, a lot of the times if you look at your stories, it's easy to identify that conflict. Like, maybe I know when I went to go have my first kiss, I was in love with this girl Crystal. I was basically stalking her at this party. I was following her around, and then I remember there was the promise that, oh, we're all going to play Truth or Dare later. We're all going to get drunk and play Truth or Dare. And I thought that was going to be my big moment for my big kiss. And I remember just being so excited by it, coming out of the bathroom, walking out and seeing her making out with another guy named Brian Coombs. And I was just it was just
I love how you remember his full name. Brian
God.
David Coombs. Damn you.
I remember what the dude was wearing. I remember he was wearing blue socks. That's how much I remember. It's seared into my memory.
Yeah, you and your cranberry hip huggers and blue socks. Damn you.
yeah. The old school movie villain shaking my fist, I'll get you next time.
Yeah.
So and again, so there should be an antagonist in your story. A lot of the times that antagonist is Brian Coombs in my stories, but in your story, it's usually
Brian Coombs the third.
Yeah, in hip huggers. Yeah. But so in your stories, a lot of the times, your antagonist might be your boss, and but also to your antagonist could just be a situation. It could be that if you wanted. Say you wanted to get somewhere and you weren't old enough to drive. Maybe the fact that the driving age is, 18 years old in whatever state you live in, maybe that's what the antagonist is. But whatever the antagonist is, whatever you identify as the thing that challenges your goal, really, really dramatize the details. And one great way to do it, and actually, Jordan, you were just doing this kind of evidence of that you're a naturally good storyteller, is by adding very specific details. By adding those details, it makes it humorous. I remember I used to tell the story, and it actually did happen, but then I just kept repeating the story to every girl I met in New York City because it got a really good response. In fact, if any girl listening in New York City, like there's a girl in New York City listening to this, she probably heard this story from me if she went out, between 2008 to 2010, she probably heard the story about when I was molested by the girl who looked like a female version of Tony the Tiger. And I remember I would say that to girls, like, and again, that metaphor, that like simile, that like, oh, this girl looked like a female version of Tony the Tiger. It's a little quirky, it's a little offbeat, but you can kind of picture it. It's like this burly girl walking around. She has that Tony the Tiger swagger. You can almost like see like a scarf around her neck. She had like the fizzy like 80s perm hair, and she had that like, they're great like grin on her face, and she was like following me around the bar. And the fact that this girl was like molesting me, like that was a story I told a lot of women, and like it usually got a pretty good response, because if I had just said, oh, this like creepy girl was following me around the bar and she molested me, not a good story. But when that creepy girl becomes, Tony the Tiger with the 80s perm and the they're great, smile on her face, it's a very visual image. People can see that. People can relate to that. And, and again, it also dramatizes the antagonist. So that's step 2.
All right, let's take a quick break. Guys, some people think the Art of Charm boot camps are just about picking up girls. And honestly, there's a lot of that. But 1 week with us, and you'll be rocking out in that department, of course, I promise. But as a guy, I know how important it is to be awesome, and not just awesome with girls. Awesome at work, awesome at home, awesome with your friends. Guys need to be awesome everywhere, and that's why we call our company The Art of Charm. It's that special something that gets you results wherever you go. And trust me, the results are real. Every day I get new emails from the guys who decided to take our boot camp, and what I read is amazing. Just weeks after graduating, they land a promotion, they form a new wolf pack, and they have a new life. And it is not an accident. Find out why at theartofcharm.com. And in the meantime, let's get back to the show.
And then the final step, is simply come to a resolution. Whatever kind of conflict your antagonist, so you have desire, you have antagonist, and then there has to be some sort of a resolution to that. Maybe the antagonist wins, maybe you win, but there has to be like a resolution to that conflict. And as sort of like just a quick tip, a lot of guys like there's a temptation to tell stories that are like really flattering and make you sound really cool. And, about the time, whatever, you started a great company and it was super successful and, you were like the big hero. But actually, stories that show more your personality and stories that are more entertaining to listen to on dates are usually stories where you didn't get what you wanted, but you learned something else.
That's a great point. Where you missed the target just enough.
Exactly, because the thing is that so much of who we are, we learned from our failures. Like so much of like what happened, and even when we started this podcast, I was talking about my 5-year girlfriend that dumped me, and like even though like I got dumped, it was embarrassing, it was awful, and it was a bad point in my life. What I learned from that is that like something needed to change. And the reason I'm on this podcast now is because of that moment. So keep that in mind. Like don't try to, me and Bobby Rio, we have this term for it. We call it like cool vulnerability. Like show some cool vulnerability. Like show that like you're not afraid to tell the story. I mean, a story I've told on every single date I've been on with women is a story where like I was completely embarrassed in 3rd grade because my grandma had told me I was related to the guy who invented the traffic light, and I really wanted to look cool, and so I was telling all my classmates. I like basically broadcast this all over school, and then Black History Month rolled around, and my teacher put up a poster, and the guy who invented the traffic light is this black inventor, and everyone was like turning around their desks, like all eyes were on me. People were like, is that your great grandfather? And I was like kind of like shrugging and being like, I was like so confused. I was like, yeah, I think so. And it was like one of those things that like, and then actually it's funny I brought that story up because it kind of brings us to the 3.5 step. The final step, and I call it a half a step, is that if you can end on a punchline, something to signal that the story is over, it works really well. Yeah. So in that story, my punchline is, I'm either a quarter black or my grandma's crazy. And that's always how I end that story. Like whenever I tell that story, I'm like, oh, well, and a lot of the time, the reason I tell that story on dates a lot, and this is just like a quick kind of pro tip, is that on dates, I kept hearing the same thing. Jordan, I'm sure you can relate to this being a guy who's gone on a lot of dates, is that girls will ask, what's your nationality? Like I don't look.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and the thing is, I used to just answer it like very like blasé, like, oh yeah,
English, Scottish and French and German and Austrian and Italian. Like, that's what everybody says in America.
That's the whole thing, right? Yeah, it's that goes back to that journalism. And journalism, like, people don't go to the movie theaters to watch journalism. People don't go to the movie theaters to watch the news. People go to the movies for stories on the screen. And that girl's on a date. She doesn't want journalism. She wants stories. She wants the entertainment. So rather than, like, when I started noticing that girls were, like, you know, kind of like checking their watch and looking around, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm half Italian, I'm a quarter German, and I'm a quarter, I think maybe Irish, but I'm not sure. Instead, I would be like, well, you know, I'm half Italian. Well, first I would say, you know, it's kind of a funny story because I'm half Italian, I'm a quarter German, and actually I'm a quarter, I'm not even sure because, and then I launch into the story. And the thing is that, like, because I was hearing that question on every single date I was on, I realized, you know what, I should figure out a story that kind of would better convey my personality, would better give her a glimpse into who I really am. And so I tell that story absolutely happened to me. It was completely embarrassing. It was a cool vulnerability moment for me. And the thing is that by telling that story, I just feel like women relate to you so much more. They remember you. I've had girls even say later on, like if we're out with their friends, they're like, oh, tell that story about your crazy grandma, you know? And that's when you know you're doing it right. It's like when they remember your stories, they remember things about you. Because if you just say, like, kind of whatever you just said, Jordan, I don't even remember, because you just, like, when you just spit the facts, people just don't remember that. But the fact that, like, if I said, you know, Jordan, I'm sure if we talk, like, you know, a year from now, you'll remember that I'm a quarter black. Oh, my grandma's crazy, right? You know, it's because I told it through a story.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, yeah, you're right. French, I don't even remember what I said. It's not important. I forgot what my own baloney history. That's the thing, man, is people don't get that especially, and here's the thing, I'm not trying to be a hater on those guys. The thing is, guys who have engineer brains, which, let's admit, are, you know, a lot of our clients are very analytical guys, and there's a very good use for that brain that's evolved that way for a damn good reason. It's just not that good at communicating in social settings, especially with women who aren't looking for it right away.
Well, exactly. And this is what separates the guy who's boring from the guy who the girl's like, oh my God, we had so much chemistry. He's so funny. Like, being funny is not being a comedian. It's just like understanding like these little sort of like social hacks, like understanding how to tell a good story. So rather than like bore girls with like the facts of your life, you're translating those facts into entertaining stories.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's great. And I love this. And I think a lot of guys are going to find a lot of good use out of this. Is there anything you want to leave us with?
You know, Jordan, I really appreciate being on. If guys want to learn more about me, just check out robjudge.com. That's just my personal website where I kind of just have all my musings and, you know, writing on there. You know, more stuff like this. I just love giving away free information, kind of like because what we talked about before. And I'm so glad I got the opportunity to come on this podcast, because I think that it's so important that guys really understand someone's teaching style and their materials, and that they're not full of shit. So that, you know, and I advise guys to go out, try the stuff that we talked about, try, you know, emotional texting, try the storytelling, tips, try approaching, you know, next time you see that hot girl. And again, I challenge you today to go out and just try reminding yourself to find out that truth. And, you know, and if it's helpful, you know, like I said, like maybe just check out more of my stuff and, you know, kind of go from there.
Excellent. Thanks so much, man.
Jordan, thank you. I really appreciate, you know, you inviting me on.
I believe in taking care of myself, in a balanced diet, and a rigorous exercise routine.
Hey guys, I'm here with my friends Chris and Greg from the Road to Ripped podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit more about how to build that Hollywood physique. So if we're trying to lose fat, build muscle, and all that stuff, do we have to cut out drinking? Because I know a lot of people still like to go out and have a cocktail, hit happy hour, have a glass of scotch before they go to bed, whatever. You know, do I have to get rid of that habit?
Yeah, so here's the deal. Most people like to get really restrictive with their plans. Mm-hmm. And when that restrictive plan doesn't work, then most people will go to the other end and just completely be like, yeah, screw it, I'm not going to do this anymore. So one of the main things is alcohol. And it's something that you can easily work into a sensible and sustainable plan. And to make your plan, if you enjoy alcohol, you don't need to drink if you don't want to. Right. But if you enjoy it and you are looking to make a sustainable fitness program that will change your physique over the next couple of years to where you want it to be so that you're happy, then the integrating alcohol into it is kind of essential.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If that's what you like to do. And alcohol in general has a lot of benefits in smaller dosages. And especially if you're focusing on good liquors and stuff like white and red wine.
Okay.
You'll have a lot of benefits, and it also just from mood benefits. You just kind of chill out a
Alcohol
little
does increase the mood. That is correct.
I mean, you hear stuff like, alcohol, as soon as you drink alcohol, your body's just going to be storing fat. As soon as you sip some alcohol, your testosterone level's going to drop. It just doesn't, that's just not true. To gain fat with alcohol, you have to be in that caloric surplus. So, having a few glasses of wine or a couple, whiskey, some whiskey.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as long as your calories are in control, there's nothing to worry about. And really, testosterone doesn't really drop until you get, buzzed. So you have that 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th drink.
Okay.
But the first, 2 to 4 drinks, I mean, there's even some research that shows it actually has a slight boost on testosterone.
You see a lot of drunk, horny guys, so maybe that's true.
Yes.
Well, I think the drunk, horny guy is more or less just
Inhibitions.
Yeah,
of course. I was just kidding.
Yeah. But I see no problem having 3 drinks a couple times per week.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is most people just don't have that moderation.
Sure.
They're not able, they go out drinking, they have to have 12 drinks.
Yeah.
But if you can just go, here's the funny thing with alcohol is after that 3rd drink, it's not giving you anything else.
Mm-hmm.
That social lubrication, that talkativeness, that joyousness, that comes from that 2nd, 3rd drink.
Right.
And then after that, you're just buzzing yourself, you're just drowning your inhibitions.
Right.
And this is the Art of Charm podcast. So, obviously, if you're going to talk to girls, having that 2nd, 3rd drink, that's probably okay. But then once you're getting sloppy drunk, then it's just downhill.
Yeah. Once people can tell that you've been drinking, you've had too much alcohol.
Exactly.
For more from Greg and Chris, go to roadtoripped.com or find them podcast in iTunes at Road to Ripped.
All right, guys, great show. Show feedback and guest suggestions. Just email me, jordanh@theartofcharm.com. I love to hear from everybody, and I read everything. Bootcamp details at theartofcharm.com as well, and that's also where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, and all that other social media. And if you guys buy something from a guest on the show, please do it through the podcast website to help support the show. If you can't find something, again, email me and we'll hook it up. Now, if you guys want to give a little something back, subscribe in iTunes and give us a 5-star rating and write something nice. We will love you forever. Now, when you write a review, it not only makes us feel proud, but it helps keep us up in the ranks so other people who use this information and can use this information can find the show more easily and get the credible advice that they need. And it's also the best way to support the show other than purchasing products and training from us. Now, tell your friends, because the greatest compliment you can give us is a referral to someone else, either in person or shared on the web. Now, have a great week. Go out there and get social and leave everything better than you found it.